So it is time to set some things straight about immigration. Again, I think this is like my fourth video on immigration, and that's because immigration is inherently a foreign policy, but also massively a domestic policy. It is one of those policies that rides the line of both. So in the US, we have about 48 million immigrants, and they're both illegal and legal. That encompasses everything. And that is about 15% of our population. But that number is just not the whole story. People just like to tout that huge number of immigrants, whether it's legal, illegal, whatever. And the argument is made that the southern border is this sieve that everyone's coming across. Well, the fact of the matter is the Center for Migration Studies says 42% of illegals are actually just visa overstayers, meaning they didn't illegally cross a border. We let them in. They ended up coming through probably an airport or drove across, and we waved them through because they had a visa, and then they just stayed when their visa ran out. Every year there are around 1 million visa overstayers in the US. And the irritating thing is we keep seeing costs being thrown around. The cost to the US, the cost to the average American. Contrary to what the right-leaning media alludes to, illegal immigrants are not eligible for almost any federal benefits. That means no TANF, no SNAP, no Social Security income, no CHIP, no Affordable Care Act. They can get emergency Medicaid and WIC sometimes if it's a life-threatening situation, but cost is not as dramatic as they like to make it sound. They like to use the big number costs, but it's like selling low in the stock market. The costs are only realized when we actually deport the people, which is why very few on the right and no one on the left is seriously talking about deporting people en masse. Sure, the far right loons are talking about deporting 10 million a year, but that's unsustainable and merely a lightning rod talking point and not actual policy. Why? Because nearly all immigrants over their lifetime end up paying more in taxes than they get back in benefits. They are a net positive, and this is actually accounted for in the US budget projections. But recently I've seen some really ridiculous nonsense come out of Twitter, which I just said ridiculous nonsense coming out of Twitter, and you're like, no shit, of course that happens. But people are saying we need to have a 20-year block on all immigration in the US. That's crazy. And I'm going to talk about what exactly happens if we cut off immigration. So let's take a look at the annual projected population size from now basically to 2100. And you can see high immigration, standard immigration, low immigration, and zero immigration. So high immigration means we would have more immigration than we are having now, and that projects us out at having a population of 435 million. But if we do what many want to do on the very far right, and that is lock down immigration for 20 years, you could see massive drops in population. And make no mistake, no country has seen drops in population as significant as this and survived. There's only one example, but it was propped up by the United Kingdom, and that is Ireland. So looking at this, a shutdown in immigration, zero immigration, means we lose 100 million people. If we just maintain our standard migration rates, 366 million people. A healthy arc where we continue to grow our population over time is necessary. It is necessary for economic strength, and it is necessary for our country to maintain an edge over other countries. Now, there are countries that absolutely would love to be in the situation the U.S. is in with a strong immigrant population. As you can see, China has a declining population, and this is significant. It is a growing problem that is going to be a problem for China for the next 75 years. In fact, the Shanghai Academy of Sciences have stated that even looking at these numbers with the yearly changes in the negative 100,000s, it is estimated that China has overcounted their population by over 100 million people in the aftermath of the one-child policy. And the reason for this is because China requires their local governments to provide good metrics. And if you want to grow in the Chinese Communist Party, you have to show that you are doing great things. So obviously, you're just going to tell them what they want to hear, meaning your population numbers at the local level are meeting all the metrics of the CCP. Well, CCP has found out that there is possibly an overcount of about 100 million people, and that's incredible. Because of that, you can see China's worker age population, and obviously it starts at 15 but and goes to 64, but this is just broadly their population for those that would be providing any kind of value rather than taking out of the Chinese social systems. So we see here what the median is, and that's runs right through the center here. You can just generally see by 2100, their population of workers is going to be less than 400 million. The last time they were at this point was in the 1960s. Again, no country, big or small, with the exception of Ireland, has ever survived a population decline like this without a systemic collapse. So when we look at this chart from a healthy standpoint, we want to be in the upper ranges up in here, perhaps somewhere between the 435 million and the 366 million. But we certainly do not want population decline. We certainly do not want a zero immigration policy that leads us to what is essentially our own version of a Chinese demographic collapse. So what are those effects? What are the after effects that come with cutting off immigration? Well, first and foremost, the economy will stall. Immigrants contribute to economic growth by expanding the labor force, which can be particularly important in countries with aging populations or labor shortages. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, foreign-born workers represent about 17.5% of the U.S. labor force. This is because the average immigrant is younger and they're of working age. In that category, they come here and start working. Immigrants have been shown to have a disproportionately entrepreneurial mindset. They have founded significant numbers of startups and new businesses. According to a study by the New American Economy, despite making up only 15% of the population in the U.S., immigrants started nearly 30% of all new U.S. businesses. A cutoff in immigrants also causes social systems that prop Americans up to start failing. Immigrants are vital for maintaining a healthy ratio of working age individuals to dependents, which is important for supporting social welfare systems. This is a problem in China where they're addressing their demographic decline by cutting social programs. Their population is aging out, so the elderly population is being supported by an increasingly younger generation that is getting smaller and smaller. The reason Social Security hasn't collapsed like it was supposed to every year for the last 10 years is because new workers and young workers have come to the U.S. contributing to the economy. Remember, illegal immigrants aren't entitled to benefits, as I said earlier. Furthermore, the military suffers. According to data from the Department of Defense, there are about 70,000 immigrants serving in active duty in the U.S. military, and that doesn't include reserves and National Guard. The U.S. military has been a pathway to citizenship for many immigrants. Non-citizens serving in the U.S. military are eligible for expedited naturalization, and over the years, thousands of service members have become U.S. citizens while serving, and many have become heroes. An elimination of immigration also means we struggle to strengthen our international ties. Immigration can strengthen diplomatic and economic ties between the host country and the immigrant's country of origin. This can lead to improved international exchange relations, international trade relations, and cultural exchanges. There are 4.5 million Indians living in the U.S. There are 56,000 Indians living in China. Who do you think India will work with? Nigeria is expected to be the next major emerging world economy. There are 700,000 Nigerians in the US. There are about 10,000 in China. Who do you think they will work with? The US has more people of damn near every other nation than China does. And that matters. Oh, and by the way, we also have 5.5 million Chinese people here too. I get the heartburn regarding immigration. It is a broken and extraordinarily complicated system that requires trying to let industrious dreamers, the scared refugees, and the gritty workers in, but keep out the overt violent felons. For the record, I think the ratio of good people to bad people crossing the border and staying past their visa expiration is probably like 99-1. But the system needs a major overhaul, similar to what we saw in Veterans Affairs. But that requires money. And even when we try to throw money at it, people like Trump undermine it by saying it's not politically prudent for the border to be fixed while he campaigns on it. The bottom line is immigration is good and will keep America healthy as we watch countries like Russia and China struggle mightily with a declining demographic.